I've heard stats flying around that healthcare organisations are now spending more money on cyber protection than on EMRs. True or not, it's clear that providing access to critical data, regardless of your current operational challenges, is a key activity in modern healthcare. In this edition of Healthcare Data Matters, we'll discuss how we can ensure that our clinical data repositories are resilient to cyber attack. Well, welcome and congratulations if you made it this far. Figures available show that companies in general are spending 12% of their annual IT budgets on cybersecurity alone. This figure is rising, and with this, reports show that healthcare is one of the most targeted business sectors for cyber criminals. And it means that healthcare has got some serious problems and considerations in this area. I spend most of my working life working on clinical data management strategies and clinical data repositories. And they can be a huge bonus to organizations in their cyber protection strategies. They do this by not only reducing the threat surface by retiring legacy applications, but at the same time ensure that clinical continuity can be achieved if, or should I say when, an organization falls victim to cybercrime. All of these benefits are based on the fact that well-architected clinical data repository is more resilient to a cyber attack than some of the primary systems it's working alongside. I talked over this with a colleague of mine, Bobby Edwards, Principal Solutions Consultant. He has a huge amount of experience working with our customers and prospects in this area, and he works to help he helps to ensure that organizations are resilient to cybercrime. Well, thank you, Bobby, for joining us today. I've already introduced previous to this, because I know your time is valuable, why we are looking at a cyber resilient clinical data repository. But you've got the most experience, I think, actually in the field with our customers and with our prospects. So how do you think people are expecting to use a clinical data repository for planned and indeed, most importantly, unplanned outages?
I think that's a great question, Jamie. Planned or unplanned, during routine risk EMR maintenance or cyber attack, you really need to treat this as a when, not an if. It's going to happen at some point for whatever reason, whether by um, a cyber criminal, and let's remember, cyber criminals are evil, not stupid. Consider that the recent successful attacks are believed to have taken months to come to fruition. That shows a great deal of patience and planning. So it's a very good likelihood that the elements for a successful attack could already be in place.
Yeah.
So how are we going to help solve this? I mean, the goal here for the people that are doing these attacks is to change your workflow. You're going to have to go away from a digital workflow. You will most likely be involving paper, right? So
Yeah.
the things we need to make sure our customers are aware of, do you have a process for accessing that critical data during a time of either cyber attack or unplanned downtime? Planned downtimes are usually understood, they're limited in scope, so usually not such a big deal. It's the unplanned ones that cause the biggest problems. So when we're talking about critical data, let's define it. At a minimum, you need to consider the clinical and business workflows that you'll be dealing with. Clinical workflows, patients show up for scheduled appointment. Do you know why they're there? Right?
Yeah.
Do you have access to their charts, to their labs? I mean, we have recent uh, customers who had this problem. And one of the problems they voiced during our discussions after the fact was they had no idea why people were in. They had no idea why patients were showing up for scheduled appointments because all of those systems were down.
Wow.
And then in order to continue to do this, you have your business workflows. You have to worry about insurance coverage, supply chain, revenue cycle management, to name a few. These are a few of the items that you have to have a handle on. How are you going to document and make sure that these elements can continue, or be um, at least be run back once your systems are back up in place? That's a huge offering. This is going to impact your business. So understanding the clinical and business workflows are huge for dealing with the business continuity and recovery efforts.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I do like what you said there. The cyber criminals are evil, not stupid, and I think that's the thing that most of our customers and prospects and everyone out there needs to be aware of. The if and when these attacks are complicated and do take time. But
Exactly. I mean, consider that what you're looking at is you're looking at a an individual or individuals most likely that are willing to run the risk of murdering people. I call it murder for a reason. This act can have a negative impact on someone's life. And if that's not murder, I don't know what is.
okay, so the meat of the conversation today, though, needs to revolve around that when, not if conversation. So we
Right.
need to make sure that the clinical data repository, the thing that you and I spend all our days talking about, we need to make sure that the clinical data repository is resilient to cyber
Agreed.
attack. And can you just go over the things that you suggest to our customers and customers, prospects, and people you talk to, the features of the data repository that you think should be in place to make it resilient?
Well, I mean, Jamie, as we've discussed, that's a huge topic, and we could spend a lot of time discussing it. There are probably about six or so elements I think are critical when we're talking about this. First and foremost, geographic separation. Be in a separate location from your primary asset, right? This is going to be huge. If you create that air gap, we have that. Air gap's a tough topic, especially when everything is accessible over the internet
Yeah.
or with the network. So we're going to create a virtual air gap, but that's huge. Um, Make sure that whatever you're doing is a read-only resource, right? And implement version control so you're aware if something is changing. You have being read-only means that you can't be overwritten. You can't have that data changed, and that's huge. The other one is a standard HIPAA high-tech requirement. Encrypt all content at rest and in transit. Common sense. If it's encrypted, if you can't read it, it's harder to change. The other thing is not relying on a simple storage replication. An A to B copy, for instance, doesn't really give you that level of protection. Not that some storage platforms don't have some protections built into them, but if you create a copy from a copy, you're potentially just copying a problem. The goal here would be to have multiple independent copies so that you have that protection from the data. The other access I think is huge is rather than giving wide open access to data, use an API via firewall. Limit what people can do in the API, right? Application program interface. Limit that information that people can access and what they can do with it so that they can't walk a file system like you could in Windows Explorer, for
Yeah.
instance.
Yeah.
The last thing that will, not the last thing, but one of the last things of the top six, I think, is implement a digital fingerprint, right? Make sure that once you have taken that file, you're aware if the file's been changed. Because if you can monitor that, you can automatically go to location 2, 3, 4, however many you decide is necessary to get that information back. It prevents the data from being changed without knowledge. This could mean an earlier potential detection if you do find something that has been altered.
Wow, top six. So it's easy then, isn't it? If we've only got these
No.
six things, we only got these six things to do. Everyone should be able to do it seamlessly and easily. But I think it's the one that jumps off to me. The second one you mentioned, a read-only resource, because I think getting your head around that and thinking in this world of rapidly changing data and real-time online data, creating
Hmm.
something that's read-only with version control for all of your clinical assets, that in itself is just a big thing to get your head around, but the benefits of it is so important, so huge. So
Precisely. If you can't alter the data, you at least you have a referenceable location.
so I suppose the final question, and again we could, and anyone that spent any time with Bobby and I knows we could literally go on forever, but so we're talking about resiliency. We're not talking about avoiding. I mean, we at BridgeHead here, we know the clinical data repositories. We're not immune. We're just helping you create a resilient one. So are these the functions that you need to be resilient? Is there anything else that we should be considering about?
Oh, absolutely. I think the first and foremost, you've got to have a plan. You've got to assume an attack has been or will be successful. And that means that you need to develop processes, workflows that are document, practiced, and updated. Each department has unique workflows unto itself, right? So, for instance, you've got lab systems, you've got scheduling, you've got your the entire range of a hospital. So understanding and making sure that each department identifies what they need in order to stay operational or at least reduce the chaos. I mean, that's huge. At a minimum, remember, these attacks are designed to create chaos, to create doubt, and to cause a problem. If we can minimize that by having a plan of what to do if or when, this is huge. What information is critical to each department's ongoing operation? And I think that's a huge component of it. Another element that I think you need to do is a plan of action is useless if the people who need to use it aren't familiar with the process.
Yeah.
Practice makes perfect is the term, right? How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. The goal isn't perfection necessarily, but a level of comfort with the procedures and methods defined so in the event of a situation, you can continue to serve the environment you're in. And I think one of the most important elements of all of this is I cannot stress it enough. Any plan must be reviewed and updated on a regular basis. New threats are identified, new methods, new ways in, updates to systems with that could provide a pathway into the system are huge. So we need to make sure that we're going to minimize the chaos and doubt in the process, make information available so the facility doesn't become inoperable. They may have to run in a reduced capacity, but this way they have the option of not capitulating with whatever the attacker demands. Because let's face a few facts. They've attacked a hospital's data, putting people's lives at risk during the period with which you're figuring this out. So if you're going to capitulate, I'm sure these are honest people and they're going to make sure that anything that they send back to you and undo is 100% accurate.
I mean, that's a huge point. Again, going back to that phrase you said at the top, they're evil, not stupid.
Hmm.
And I totally agree with you. I think the planning it's the root of all this, because there are many instances, many things in the cyber area that you download and fix a problem. You can't do this with data access. You've got to prepare, haven't you? You've got to make sure it's done
Absolutely.
beforehand.
Absolutely. Well, we had one of our customers who was hit had just received verification that they were clear. And within a week or so after receiving that verification, this unfolded for them.
Yeah, I mean, again, we make sure that all of our customers, all of our prospects are fully aware that every day there's a new, as you said, a new method of attack.
Hmm.
And we've seen ransomware. We've gone through WannaCry, right way through
Yeah.
ransomware, denial of service attacks, and we've got things like attacks on firmware. We've now got attacks where they're simply modifying just one or two files, but you don't know which ones. So
Right. Or
you've
just
got,
going into a database and tweaking some of the values in your lab systems, maybe.
yeah, all of these. That's why it's painful as it is to say. I totally agree with it that we need to make sure that everyone
Hmm.
plans and then checks those plans again. Bobby, we like to
Absolutely.
keep we like to keep these things brief. So
I do.
as ever, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and we'll get back to you with any questions or comments. So thank you very much for helping us today.
Absolutely. Glad to do it.
Well, a huge thanks to Bobby. I'll put myself in this little box at the bottom so we can focus on the 6 key takeaways that we discussed on the call. The last part of the conversation was about planning, and I can't stress enough the importance of planning. We must accept that cyber criminals are evolving faster than the victims are able to protect themselves. And these plans that you create must be reviewed and tested regularly because the cyber criminals aren't simply going to stand still. I hope you found this helpful and speak to you again soon on other Healthcare Data Matters vlogs.